Welcome to the Well Woman Show, where we interview women executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs.
And you're listening to the Well Woman Show,
where motivated women achieve fulfillment and well-being.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
Take time for myself by coming to things like Well Woman Drinks.
To be accepting of myself no matter what. Step away from judgment as much as possible.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
You're going to be in for a good ride. I don't regret anything. Everything I've ever done, I've learned from it, one way or another, good or bad.
Being a little bit selfish for yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first and then give what's left.
I'm a woman. I would prefer to tell my own story. My story, though it's very personal, is universal.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show. And now your host, Giovanna Rossi.
Hi, Giovanna Rossi here, and welcome to another episode of The Well Woman Show, where I interview women leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs about their lives and their road to becoming and being who they are today. Do you ever find yourself overwhelmed with your responsibilities, and it seems like you'll never get it all done? Well, you're not alone. We all need to remember to use our superpowers, the ones we already have but don't use all the time, and take advice and wisdom from one another. Towards the end of the show, in a segment called Superpowers for Success, I ask my guest about her superpowers, and the answers will give you the strength, perspective, and power to keep on being the well woman you are. I'm so happy you're here, so thanks for tuning in. Today's topic is discovering the power of your hidden resources, and hopefully by the end of the show, you'll be inspired to view the challenges in your life as doors to new opportunities. Listen to your inner voice to guide you, even if it may feel scary, and take the initiative to make change when you see it's needed. My guest today is Rachel Prinz. Rachel is an architecturally trained American author, designer, preservationist, documentary filmmaker, artist, and speaker, working primarily in sustainability and preservation, research, and architectural engagement. Rachel has served as a preservation commissioner in Taos, New Mexico, as the host of the University of New Mexico Sustainability Institute, and as co-host of TEDx ABQ Women. She has given multiple TEDx talks on modern applications of vernacular design and critical regionalism, landscape preservation, pattern languages, and photography. Rachel gives presentations, tours, and lectures, and writes articles that integrate archaeology, architecture, place, culture, and emerging trends in sustainability. Today, I talk with Rachel about the work she does and the importance of using sustainable resources, how she learned to let her intuition guide her, and how she's able to see one of the biggest challenges, a loss of eyesight, as a blessing. The free giveaway today is the Create Your Purpose worksheet based on Simon Sinek's Start With Why. This is a great giveaway because it quickly lets you into Simon Sinek's model of starting with why when you're working on creating your purpose. Now to my interview with Rachel. Okay, I am speaking with Rachel Prinz, who is an architecturally trained American designer and artist working in preservation, sustainability, and architectural engagement. I love that. I took that right from your bio.
Aw.
Let's just pull that apart a minute and in fact, we're going to get into sort of what you do, and we'll get into that. But I wanted to start out because on this show, we really talk about, I talk to women leaders and community leaders, entrepreneurs, artists, designers, about themselves and about what they do, but also about, how you do it and maintain your own sense of well-being and promote well-being around you and that kind of thing. So we'll get into a lot of different things here. But first I want to welcome you to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Rachel, you were just talking about, you're living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You've just published a book. You've done a million other things that we'll talk about. And you're living in a house in sort of Nob Hill-ish in Albuquerque, getting it ready to sell for your mother-in-law. Mm-hmm. And then where are you going to go after that? What is your plan these days?
Right now, my plan is to go to Santa Fe I have, my heart is still very much here in New Mexico, as is my work. And I have projects in Taos and Santa Fe and a couple other pueblos in this area, but more in that direction. So I think it would be a really great fit. Plus, I'd love to be in the historic district near some of my favorite architects who are working there.
So have you found a place in Santa Fe yet?
No, not yet.
You're going to be looking to move up there, though, pretty soon. Okay.
I hope so.
But how long have you been in Albuquerque?
A couple years.
Oh, okay.
And I was in Taos before that for 6 years. And that's where I met my husband. And we came down here because I had a project with some of my favorite boys, a couple that had bought this historic building at Broadway and Gold, and they turned it into a urban spa, and they started this amazing business, and I wanted to be in the thick of it while they were converting the building so that I could be available to them when things arose, which they always do in a complex, large historic building like that. So,
wow. So you were there helping them through the process as their architect.
Well, as their designer, yeah. Mostly historic preservationist. I mean, really, I was helping them to figure out a way to merge sustainability goals, which are usually not really looked at in preservation, even though preservation is the most sustainable thing we can do. But most of the time you don't really try to merge those. You aren't thinking about vertical gardens in context of preservation. And how could we manage to do that in a historic district? And even simple things like, how do you get solar panels on top of a historic roof when you have structural issues or when you have site issues? They don't want it to look different. But hopefully we are able to sort of evolve that conversation so people who want to do preservation later will have an easier time. So.
And Rachel, you're trained as an architect, but you've done so many different things within the realm of building and space and design. What sort of has been leading you down that path? What has been your guiding what's the guiding factor here? Spirit,
heart. I believe that the places that we're trying to create something with our lives, when we're working in alignment with our highest good. And, that's something that we can create spaces for the something to manifest through us that are more gentle and more supportive of the people that we want to be. Or they're more sustainable. They're easier for us to manage, or they require fewer outside inputs. I just like the idea of helping people create spaces where they can be fully embodied and feel safe and warm and loved, and so that they can be their highest selves and do what they're sent here to do.
And you just mentioned aligning with your higher self. What do you mean by that?
For me, it's that still small voice. You know, that thing that says, keep going, or try this. And it's things that you don't feel like you deserve to do. I don't have the qualifications for that. But there's this voice that's like, no, really do that. And
is that intuition, or what is that?
I think it is intuition to some degree, but I think sometimes it's almost like we have a mission and we don't know what it is because we've been confused by all the inundation of information that we get on the day to day. And we forget to be in alignment with our mission. And for me, that voice is always asking me, like, how is this going to help people? And, how can I use my talents? Or even more importantly, how can I encourage somebody else to use their talents? Like I get interns from all over the world now who want to come work with me. And that's my favorite part of my job is, I had a little girl from Italy come in. She was an architecture student last year. And I felt like I was her guide, to find her way through architecture as a mentor, but also as a friend. And I think that's one of the most amazing things that we get to do in this life.
And so this young woman came across from Italy and stayed in New Mexico for some time?
For 3 months.
Oh, did she live with you?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
And well, she's not, so the way that internships work in Italy when they're in school, they're not allowed to be paid. But I am from a new generation of architectural professionals that believes that it's wrong to take from people when both people are gaining from it. So where before when I was coming up, nobody paid me for my internships until I had a lot of experience. And I don't believe in that, because it made it really hard for me to be really present to learn, because I was always worried about money. Yeah. And I didn't want that to happen with her. So I let her stay here instead of paying her. And that was the way that we could work around her not being allowed to be paid.
Oh, okay.
So it would have probably cost her a fair amount of money to come across the world to work with me. But I wanted to try to make that right. So it was pretty amazing. It was an amazing experience.
Oh, wow. That's great. And how do you get these interns?
They find out about my work, and then that's not uncommon. I get probably 30 requests a year from all over the world, from New Zealand and South America, a lot from India, and a lot from Europe, Italy, Brazil. I get people are really interested in this idea of going back to the past to learn how to do things really simply. And so
let's talk a little bit about that. What is this that you do? And I know that you've just written a book called Hacking the Earthship, a book about home design and earth sheltering. But is that sort of, does that encompass the core of your beliefs about architecture and design and space, or is there something else that informed that book?
The Earthship book was a direct response to living in Taos, New Mexico, and being a preservationist there, and being really engaged by this idea of sustainable architecture and what that could mean. And that's where the center of the Earthship phenomenon really is. Michael Reynolds started there with the Earthship idea in the 1970s. And he's taken it really far, and it's gone all around the world, and there have been movies about it, and it's been very evolved. But my bent is more about traditional architecture and how we can live without depending on technology to make our buildings work. So my bent in architecture is more about vernacular architecture and indigenous architecture, things that are made of that place, where the stones at Chaco Canyon came from Chaco Canyon. The trees that they used for vigos, we know where those came from. We know what mountains those came from. And there's a sort of deep connection to place and to the climate. They're studying the way that the sun moves through the sky and the way that the stars move through the sky. And that all is informing how they design. We know that. We see that at Chaco Canyon, where there are nichos in some of these ceremonial structures that align with different star clusters. And so to me, that really calls in a kind of architecture that's deeply connected to place, and that's so simple and truly sustainable, because it's using all the things that are right there. It can be repaired anytime, because all you have to do is go grab a little bit of mud and some straw and put it all back together. And to me, that's where the real beauty in architecture comes from.
And when you study these historic sites and buildings of Indigenous people, perhaps, do you work with people from that culture to understand and proceed?
Absolutely.
Because it's obviously could be a touchy area.
It's a place where one wants to walk softly. I mean, there's lots of things that we can tell about the architecture that have nothing to do with their culture. You know, buildings respond to different things. They respond to the wind or to the sun, or a great example is at Mesa Verde. They built the buildings into the sides of these cliffs, but the cliffs always faced where the sun was, so it was always in the south. And so there are things about that don't depend on the cultural telling of that story. Where it gets really beautiful is when you find out that the Acoma people and the Santa Ana people all harken back to the Chaco people. And from before that, there was another story from that does tie into their culture very deeply. And on very rare occasions, when I'm lucky enough to get to hear some of those stories, I get to hear bits and pieces that are appropriate for outsiders to know.
Right.
So.
Right. And Rachel, you have a sort of sense about you that you've just got lots going on. I mean, both on paper and then also just speaking with you personally, you've got a glow and a sort of smile on your face. Right before I arrived, it started raining, and you said you had been outside dancing in the rain, which I think is awesome. What do you think that is? What is that? And is that what sort of drives you forward as a person accomplishing so much in your life?
I think it is. I think for me, it's sort of it's a deep trust in source energy. I don't always understand what I'm doing. I don't understand what I'm writing. Sometimes when I wrote the book, one of the things that really intrigued me was that there were times where I would pick up the writing from the day or 2 days before, and I wouldn't have remembered writing what I wrote. In fact, there were times where I thought, I didn't even know that I knew this. Literally, that literally happened. And that was really shocking for me. And I think some of that started because, when I turned 30, I found out I was going blind. And, I had trained as an architect, gone to architecture school, and was working in firms. And then suddenly everything that I thought was the trajectory of my life, which was, my goal was I thought I was going to be one of the top 10 architects in the country. That's what I really wanted.
That was your goal.
That was my goal and what I dreamed of. And then all of a sudden, instantly from the moment they told me, they rushed me into surgery the next day, and they were trying to slow it down. And something shifted in me. And I knew that everything that I had based my suppositions about the world on was dissolving. And it was dissolving in front of me. All the things that I had based my reality on were gone. And the thing that kept coming back was this drive, like, don't let that stop you, but not in a rational way, but in just a really deeply heart-centered way. And then I started listening, and these messages would come through about things I was supposed to do, and it would open doors, and another door opened and another door opened. And it became all about waiting for this sort of message from my heart, if that makes any sense, and just listening and being present and willing for that to happen.
And what happened with the blindness?
I'm frontally blind in my right eye. I still have my peripheral vision, but it seems stable. And the other one can go. They think it's genetic. There's a group of young women my age who have this condition, and they're not really sure, because it's sort of like macular degeneration, but it's not macular degeneration. That doesn't usually hit people who are 30. And so they're not really sure what direction that's going to go. But I'm kind of ready that it can go at any minute. I came to terms with that a long time ago. And while there's a part of me that's sort of brokenhearted about that, there's this other part of me that's so thankful for what has happened since, that when my mom will often send me these little notes from, some magazine, AARP or something, about some new treatment. And, a couple weeks ago, we had this conversation. She said, "Oh, there's these new things they can put on your eye, and maybe they can fix it, and like eye replacements and implants and things." And I said, "Mama, please understand, like, I wouldn't stop this. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't go back. And I mean, it would have to be something where it was real easy. I wouldn't go through a lot for it. And she said, why not? And I said, because I like the person I am now. I'm a much nicer person, and I'm much more engaged in my community and the lives of the people around me, because I'm not taking for granted what could go away tomorrow. Mm. And I think I thought that was really telling, because I didn't really realize that I had this, that I was okay with it now. So.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a really big thing to happen in your life for things to shift and change.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not going to be too vain when I say that I was kind of a jerk. I was really I like the person I am now. I was so driven before that I was willing to do anything to get where I wanted to go. And I was still nice about it, but I'm a much gentler person now.
Yeah. It's sort of this cliche of something bad has to happen, before you realize how good you have it, or before you realize how good life really can be.
Absolutely.
And it's a cliche for a reason, right? It's because it's...
Wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't real or wasn't true? She learned the hard way. But I think it is.
And so did a series of these things happen throughout your life, or did you just sort of have this big moment with the blindness when you were 30?
The blindness was the big one, but it's happened since, and now looking back on it, there were moments where it was happening before, and sometimes I was present and listened and went the direction that the universe was asking me to go, and other times I didn't, and I paid a price for that in some cases, which I thought was really interesting too.
Do you have any regrets, though? I mean, where does regret come into into your mindset? Because it seems like you are accepting and moving on with the blindness. Mm-hmm. And you say you were a jerk and all these other things before. Do you have regrets, or do you think everything happens for a reason?
Yes. One of the really interesting things that has come up very recently for me has been this opportunity to work with this amazing architect that I love in Santa Fe. And she's just so incredibly gifted. And I had said for years and years that I would never work for another architect again. And I think part of that was because of just the heartbreak of not being able to be, quote unquote, a real architect. And
because of the blindness?
Because of the blindness, because I didn't take the exam. Right. And I had gotten to this point where I just can't work a whole day the way I used to. You know, most architecture firms, you work 10 or 12 hours a day. You go home, you study for the exams. It takes you a couple years of doing that. And you take all the 6 different parts of the exams and you become an architect and you just suck it up and do it. And that's how you prove your mettle. Well, that wasn't possible for me anymore. So I had gotten to this point where I had sort of maybe persuaded myself that I couldn't do it, that it was too much, like I just had to give up. And so, yeah, I regret that I didn't get my license. That's the big thing. Because I did work for years and years in firms. I managed firms, in some aspects of firms that another architect could do. But I can't really call myself a real architect. Mm. And so, I have recently, like within the past few days, realized that was something that I felt like I wasn't so sure I'd made the right decision. But interestingly, I think that working with this architect has part of that, because she's really pushing me like, you can do this. We'll make it work so you can do this. Just get the dang license, you know? And so, and there's this part of me that my heart is full again in a way that I wasn't expecting it to be, because I didn't even realize that I had that much regret about it.
Oh, so it's something new.
Very new. Mm. Very new.
Ah, interesting. So you'll have to work that through.
And see how it evolves. Mm-hmm. I mean,
because on the one hand, you know, you may not have taken some of the roads and done some of the things had you had had you gotten your license.
That's absolutely true. I definitely, I know for a fact I would never have made a documentary or started a television show or any of these things about that are really fundamentally about where I was turning my career from architecture to architectural storytelling. None of that would have ever happened. And I think now, looking at the way that people are using my work to supplement their own, I think that's actually one of my great gifts, is that I do have this way of seeing, architecture that comes from the storytelling point of view. And I wouldn't have that if I had stayed with doing red lines and stamping drawings and sitting in front of a computer doing CAD. Mm-hmm. I just never would have got that experience.
So, I mean, just in thinking about all of what you have accomplished and all the output, I mean, it's just an incredible amount of stuff that you are doing and have done. What does it take to do that? Is it some sort of courageous, element of your personality, or is it something you've had to cultivate, this sort of fearless, I'm going to go and tackle this?
Yes. It's an aspect of my personality, for sure, because I was misunderstood when I was younger also, and, often sort of ridiculed for my points of view on the world, even when I was little.
What do you mean?
I was smart and woo-woo in Texas, where woo-woo is not cool. And I was smart in a way that was really irritating, because I'm deeply curious, which I think is a fundamental aspect of who I am and why I've done 1,000 things. And I sort of drove all my teachers crazy because I was curious about everything, where some kids are like, oh, I want to know about quantum physics. And they're like, wow, that's really weird. You're little. Why do you care about quantum physics? I was like, oh, I want to know about quantum physics and spirituality and plants medicine and everything. There was no topic that I was not interested in. Oh, wow. So I think that the curiosity factor is huge. And the fearlessness factor, I think that you develop sort of this bravery that from being considered weird that helps a lot. But I also was very interested in cultivating the best parts of who I was, so that I could use my fearlessness to show people how to be fearless. Because a lot of people think it's innate. It's not innate. It's work. It's work. It's coming up on the wall, every wall that's placed in front of you, and saying, okay, I've got to find a way up, over or around this, and nobody's going to do it but me. And I really deeply feel like there's something on the other side of this wall that's worth doing, having, being, seeing, sharing, whatever that is. But it's constantly facing yourself and having to face and sort of have a battle of wills against the part of you that's lazy or apathetic or doesn't think it's your job or tired or scared. Fear plays a huge factor.
It's scary to be fearless, right?
It's scary to be, you're constantly afraid in fearlessness. I am. That's been my experience. I'm terrified a lot. I cry a lot. I feel not brave enough and not good enough a lot, but I don't have another choice. Nobody's going to do this but me. I'm the one hearing the voice that's saying this needs to be done. And I get mad. I used to get mad at the world. Why isn't anybody doing this? Can't they see it's such a simple problem to solve? And then one of the elders from one of the pueblos that I worked at said to me one day on a tangential conversation, but you're the one who's being told that you're the only one who's being given the message. So maybe the message is for you. And that to me was like, oh, wait a minute. I can do something about this. Like I'm the one who's been called forth to do something about this. And then you have to get into that whole issue of trust, because trusting spirit is another full-time job. Like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going crazy, but it sounds like a really good idea and I think it could help people. And then you have to do it, hopefully, then all of a sudden things happen from it. And you just have to trust that it's really there and that voice is really guiding you and not demanding things from you. And it's a real balance, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We only have a couple minutes left. Wow, this went really fast. How do you know you're making an impact?
Sometimes it's it can be so benign. Like I'll still get emails about my TED Talk, and from people around the world, and that was in 2011, and I'm constantly and always surprised by it. I'm like, how did you even find it? Yeah. But those kinds of things happen a lot, or people will email me or call me and they'll say, I have this project and I know this isn't what you do, but you just seem to be a problem solver and I'm stuck. And that to me is really surprising and engaging, and it makes me want to do more. But so much of it comes from other people, reaching out for help. And that to me is so touching. That's like, oh, I am actually making a difference. Yeah.
What about being spread too thin and knowing when to say no? How do you balance that as an entrepreneur and business owner and artist and everything that you are?
I cannot pretend that I have been very good at that. I have. I feel like I could be a really much more successful in my business if I would quit taking on quite as many pro bono projects. But I am definitely coming from my heart about things, and that's what people are drawn to about me. So that's how I get involved in so many things. But last year, I made the very difficult decision to stop doing quite so much volunteer work, and it really became, it wasn't about charging people for things. It was about taking any amount of time off to take care of myself. Because I wasn't giving myself that. I didn't have weekends. I was at a conference. I was doing some lecture. I was doing a tour. I was doing whatever, and I wasn't getting paid for any of it. I was doing it from the heart, which is great. But I fundamentally let myself go. It was harder for me to walk. It was harder for me to get around. I was tired. I felt like I was definitely spread too thin. And, so I said, what can I do that is what is the highest order that I can do? And, I chose maybe just 2 or 3 things of places where I felt like I could really make a difference. And I let the rest of it go. And now I'm learning how to relax ever.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That is another art that I'm cultivating.
What do you do to relax then?
Spend time in the garden, get out in nature. Nature is definitely one of my, some people like books and some people like music and whatnot. And for me, nature is where I find my peace and my connection to spirit. So I'm doing a lot of that. And I've learned how to meditate, which I think is great, very helpful, especially when I can't sleep because my mind is like, did you think about that? Did you think about that? Did you do that? Did you call that person?
Do you keep a notepad by your bed to take down
multiple notepads in every room? And and on my iPhone, I have the note app that I use sometimes too, or I'll, if I'm driving and I can't write down things that I know it's important to forget.
Voice memo.
I have piles and piles and piles of them. But I take great satisfaction in marking things off lists. And my very favorite thing to do is I have a spiral binder for my list, and I'll tear it out like there's some satisfaction from tearing out this spiral piece of paper and throwing it away and being like, I'm done.
Done with that.
Never mind that there's 45 other lists behind it. It's true.
Well, Rachel, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I've been speaking with Rachel Prinz, and Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Jill.
That's it for our show today. I've been speaking with Rachel Prinz, architecturally trained author, designer, preservationist, documentary filmmaker, artist, and speaker, working primarily in sustainability and preservation research and architectural engagement. I spoke with Rachel about listening to intuition, building with sustainability in mind, and viewing life's challenges as doorways to new growth and opportunity. You can get the free giveaway this week at wellwomanlife.com/037show. Our monthly live event, Well Woman Drinks, brings together women to share our successes and challenges as leaders, moms, aunts, sisters, and all the other roles we carry. If you'd like to attend a Well Woman Drinks near you, or if there isn't one in your city yet and you'd like to start one, email me at info@wellwomanlife.com. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and subscribe in iTunes. And while you're there, leave a review. This helps raise visibility for the show, which is super helpful when it comes to producing the show every week for you. You can also continue the conversation in the Well Woman Life community group at facebook.com/groups/wellwomanlifecommunity. For feedback, comments, or just to let me know you were listening today, find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Well Woman Life. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, have a super powerful week.